Welcome to the Empowerment Sessions. I'm Marty. I'm joined by Scott McDonald, one of the consulting attorneys here at LS Carlson Law. So what is the Empowerment Sessions? Really simple. We do a long form podcast that we do pretty much on a weekly basis. They run long. They go really in depth on how homeowners can solve disputes on their own and when to bring an attorney on. We really dive deep into specific dispute types. The Empowerment Session is a short form of that. We're bringing on people that really know what they're talking about, attorneys within the organization that can talk to us about a very specific type of dispute and just condense it down into 10-15 minutes. So if you want to learn more about a particular topic, you can refer to the long form podcast, but we wanted to give you a bite-sized version of it as well. So Scott, thanks for being here for the first one.
Yeah, glad to be here.
I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah.
So the first up on the list is water intrusion. Mm-hmm. Something that I know that you see quite a bit.
Yeah, we deal with water intrusion a lot, and it's an important one.
Yeah. So let's go down the structure. The first thing we want to do is define it. And I think the key thing here is there's a huge difference between water intrusion, between a condo association and a homeowner, just your typical single family home.
Yeah.
So let's define water intrusion if you don't mind.
Yeah, so water intrusion is when you have water coming in where it shouldn't.
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of times, and it becomes very important where it's coming from.
Yeah.
Right? And so defining water intrusion, it's coming in where it shouldn't. When you're looking at who is responsible for what, when you're in a condominium, a lot of times it could be coming from the roof, the exterior walls, plumbing, all those different things. So that's kind of where common sources of where these water intrusions come from. And it's very serious because you're dealing with water that's coming into your home and causing damage. And the more that it sits, the worse that it gets.
Okay, so let's think of an example, because for me, condo seems rather obvious. And the first thing I think of is the roof. You have a common area roof, and it's leaking, and it's not your roof. It's the association's problem to take care of it.
Yeah, so it's very alarming. You have the roof, you're there, you're in your home, and it's raining.
Yeah.
And it's raining in your home. And you're in a situation where, it can be alarming and disturbing if you're a homeowner, and you have to know what to do when that happens. Right?
Yeah. So let's divert for a minute, because what is unclear to me, so it makes a lot of sense on a condo dispute or water intrusion, but water intrusion from a single family home, to me that seems like, well, I own the roof, I own the whole property. When does water intrusion come into play on a single family home?
It doesn't happen as much.
Okay.
A lot of well, it happens all the time, but usually when it's a single family home and it's coming in from your roof or your exterior walls, that's yours and it's going to be your responsibility. The only time that it would become where there would be HOA responsibility is if there's a common area drainage or irrigation, something where there's some failure. So on a single family home where we're seeing the interaction where there are failures by the HOA, it's usually with like drainage or irrigation that the HOA is required to maintain. Okay,
so an example of that would be like a pool, a community pool. And there's drains all the way around. It rains real hard, and instead of or a green belt.
Yeah.
And instead of it's maybe up on a hill and you're down, and the drainage isn't working well, and all of that water is now draining into your yard or your home, and it damages it from there.
Or it's clogged. A lot of times you have a drainage that's clogged, and so instead of going into the drainage that's supposed to be maintained by the HOA, it's overflowing and flooding. Yeah.
Okay.
But we see it more often in the context of condominiums.
Let's dive into that a little bit, because what's interesting about that is what's the condo associations versus what is you're responsible for. That gets really muddy when you start thinking about, well, what's behind the wall versus the exterior. Can you define in a typical scenario, what is the condo association versus what is the homeowner?
Yeah, so what you're
water intrusion.
Yeah, what you're looking at is responsibility. If you have water coming in your home, you have to determine where it's coming from. That's rule number one. And if it's coming from the common area, and usually common area, first of all, common area is defined usually specifically in the CC&Rs of your HOA. But generally in the context of an HOA, you're dealing with the roof, you're dealing with the exterior walls, you're dealing with the plumbing inside the walls, all those different things. If the water is coming from something that is required to be maintained by the HOA, that is something that they are responsible and that they need to be remedying and fixing.
Okay, so let's make sure that we're clear on this. What about a toilet, a dishwasher.
Yeah.
So what is the homeowner's fault? So if something's leaking in your house, what are the common things that are your responsibility?
Yeah, so things that are homeowners' responsibility typically are toilets, faucets, sinks, dishwashers. Even it gets down to like windows, if it's the window sill or seal, or as opposed to like the window frame, it just gets different, right? So
interesting.
those are, a lot of it comes down to if it's in the walls,
yeah,
then it's easier to understand that it's usually something that is the HOA. If it's outside of the wall, or I guess if it's
inside the wall.
Inside, yeah. Well, if it's on the other side of the wall, it would be the HOA. If it's on this side of the wall, then it would be the homeowner's responsibility.
So it's like drywall side yours.
Yeah.
As soon as that drywall's open, HOAs.
Yes.
That's a decent rule of thumb.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it's like I said, it's specifically defined in the CC&Rs, but generally speaking, those are general rules that are pretty common.
Okay, so all of that's all defined really well in pretty much all CC&Rs.
Yes.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Every CC&R that has a definition section, it says common area, and it will specifically define what is common area and what is not.
Okay, and so that kind of goes into what does the law say about this in terms of who's responsible for it. I know the CC&Rs define it, but I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what does the law say?
Yeah, the law says if the water is coming in, essentially if the water is coming in from something the HOA is required to maintain, then that damage would be the responsibility of the HOA. That's a very simple way of looking at it.
Okay.
Yeah. So, for example, if the HOA is required to maintain the roof and there's a failure in the roof and water comes in, that would be something that the HOA would have to fix the roof first, right? That's number one. You have to stop the source of the leak. Then there's like the whole remediation of the water coming in and mold and different things like that.
Yeah.
And then there's the issue of like restoring the interior of the unit. So even if it's like what is normally carpet or, that is, but if it was caused by a HOA failure to maintain that, then they would have to fix that as well.
Okay, so this is where I think the point of like clarity needs to be like crystal clear, because I feel like what happens when you want to get the problem solved as soon as possible.
Sure.
I mean, water damage is nasty. I mean, I've had a couple floods at my house.
And it's urgent. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you want to get it solved like immediately. Yeah. The knee-jerk inclination, if I'm a condo owner, is call a plumber, emergency plumber, get him out here as quickly as possible, and just go. And that makes sense if it is.
Yeah, if it's coming for your faucet, from your toilet, from your dishwasher, yes.
Yeah.
Do it right away.
Yeah. But
call a plumber right away. Yeah.
If it's inside the wall,
if it's coming from the roof inside the wall, then it's very important that you notify the HOA in writing.
Yes.
Right, immediately. You have a duty to do that, and they have a duty to respond.
It probably is. And would you say like best practice, if it's an emergency, fire them off an email and call them. But you want to memorialize.
It's okay to call, but you want to memorialize it because absolutely.
Okay. What happens if they don't answer? Because this thing is just going to cause more and more havoc. And then at what point does the HOA say, well, we weren't able to answer, and you let this flood that could have been a $10,000 problem now is drug on and it's cost $200,000.
Well, if it's something the HOA was supposed to respond to and they weren't, that would still be the responsibility. The homeowner does have a duty to mitigate their damages. They have to mitigate those damages. We had one recently where it was like gushing in from a unit above my client's, and at that point, neighbor wasn't home, HOA wasn't answering, so they called the fire department because they just had to shut it off, and that was the only way they had to do it. So
that's actually an interesting point. It's not the first person I would have thought about.
Yeah, but in that situation where no one was responding, you have to mitigate the damages. That was really the only option at that point. That is not common.
But still, it's still a great tip in terms of a fail-safe.
Yeah, you have to, because I guess the point is, if the water's coming in, it is urgent. You can't just sit on it, right?
And I would assume even some plumbers that come out, they might say, I can't do this without.
Yes.
I can't shut off the water unless the HOA says yes. But if the fire department comes out, it's emergency services, they're probably just...
If it is an emergency, they're going to do it. If it's affecting a bunch of other units. And it's different if it's not like dripping, that's not an issue. If it's like gushing, like a waterfall type thing, that is where they would be getting involved.
Okay, let's walk through the... steps how a homeowner would fight back. How does the homeowner what are the steps that they take as soon as they realize there is some form of water intrusion that they can attribute back to the HOA? What are the steps to take? What are good practices? We just talked about memorializing things in writing. What are the steps that they should take in terms of trying to solve it on their own?
Yeah, so if it seems, a lot of times you don't know for sure, but if it seems like it's coming from the common area, it's something that is the HOA responsibility. Like I said, it's very important to notify them, make sure it's in writing. The other thing about it is taking photos and documenting things. I think it's always a good idea to make a timeline, like of this is happening. It doesn't have to be totally, but just get like a journal or a timeline of how it happened, just to make sense of it all.
Yeah.
Like I said, photos, documenting it, and then notifying. That's first, right? And so from there, a lot of times they're having to stay on top of the HOA because sometimes it's very urgent, but a lot of times you don't get that urgent response that you need. And it is important to be the squeaky wheel to continue to push the HOA to do what they're supposed to do.
And I guess it really depends too, because if you wind it back to my roof has this leak, hey, the roof is leaking. I told you about this. They've done nothing. And now we get a storm that's 3 days worth of, you know, seasonal rain, and then now you've caused a big problem. If you keep that well documented, then
I notified you here, you didn't respond, and I kept notifying you.
Here's the pictures.
Photos are important, videos. Like we see that also. You see photos, we see videos of leaks. Those are all very helpful to understand how it went down.
Okay.
And documenting it, it's very important,
What are the triggers, in your opinion, to when it's time to seek, an attorney, or if you want to escalate, like, no, they're ghosting you. What are the points that you would see that says, hey, I should probably bring on an attorney for this? Yeah,
so if you're reaching out to them and they're kicking it down the road or not responding, if they're not responding to you, you need to act, and you need to act quickly, right? Because sitting water gets worse. It turns to mold. It turns to health issues. It gets worse and worse, right? So it is important to escalate it quickly. So if they're not responding to you, or if they're delaying and just kicking it down the road, that it's important to escalate it, whether that's through it could be through involving an attorney to be able to escalate it further. So normally if they're not responding to you, or their responses, HOAs a lot of times will deflect responsibility. So if there's any possible way that they can make an argument that it wasn't them, we see that a lot, where it's pretty clear that it's coming from the roof but they're trying to deflect and say that it was your responsibility somehow. Sometimes you don't even understand where they're coming from. But like, if they're deflecting and not taking responsibility, then that is definitely a time where it would be important to reach out and maybe look at hiring an attorney.
Yeah,
or at least consulting an attorney.
Because that could be back and forth. They might say, it's your insurance company. Insurance company says it's not our responsibility. It's the HOA, and you get in this endless loop of hell.
With the insurance companies that are pointing the finger at the other insurance company, and the HOA is deflecting and pointing it back at you, and everyone kind of knows it's them. We see that a lot, right?
Is that when like you guys as a firm would hire like an expert to determine where the cause is?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of times you use a vendor, plumbers, and they'll come out, a plumber or a roofer to come out and be able to inspect and get those reports. Or you can review the reports if they'll give it to you, which they should, the HOA, whoever they had to come out and to inspect.
Yeah, so I guess to put a button on it, if they don't respond at all and they're just and they simply ghosting.
If they don't respond, or if they're delaying, or if they're deflecting responsibility, that is definitely a time. And this is not one that you want to sit on. Right? This is not one where because the more time that passes, the worse it gets. Right? And so this is not one. And when we get this, it is very urgent. Water intrusion cases are urgent, right? Yeah. And so this is not one you want to sit on.
Well, we see it. I mean, sometimes water can be worse than fire in terms of the damage that it
because like I said, water comes in, it gets into the the drywall, whatever is water, and if it sits, it turns into mold. Mold can be destructive, and it can cause health issues, and it gets into the HVAC, and it blows through. A bad situation can turn worse and worse and worse until something is done about it. Yeah.
Scott, thanks so much for the insight, and I'm excited to hear what the people think, and we're going to continue to do these, at least an entire video series, so thanks for being the first guest.
Yeah.